So, have you ever stopped to think about what a custom-built guitar and a can of soda really have in common? I mean, on the surface, almost nothing, right? But underneath it all, they both start with a huge decision, picking the right way to make them. In this explainer, we're going to break down the 4 fundamental production processes, all the way from one-of-a-kind items to millions of identical products.
Let's start with that question because it really gets to the heart of everything. How is a handcrafted, custom-made guitar different from a can of soda? Well, beyond the obvious, the biggest difference from a business point of view is the process you use to create them. One process is built for uniqueness, the other is built for massive scale. And as you're about to see, getting that choice right is absolutely everything.
So let's get on the same page with our main term here. A production process isn't just about the machines on a factory floor. It's the whole shebang. It's the step-by-step sequence of operations, it's the resources like people and equipment, and it's all the controls you need to turn raw materials into a finished product. You can think of it like the master blueprint for how anything gets made.
Here's the game plan for today. We'll kick things off in the world of low-volume, high-variety stuff, looking at job shops and batch processes. Then, we'll flip the script and jump to the other extreme, the high-volume, low-variety world of repetitive and continuous models. After that, we'll put them all side by side to compare, and we'll finish up by talking about the critical skill of making that perfect match between a product and its process.
All right, let's dive in. At the end of the spectrum where everything is about customization and being flexible. This is the world of making just a few things at a time, but with a ton of variety. And this is home to 2 processes, the job shop and the batch process.
First up, we have the job shop. You'd use a process like this when you only need to make a very small number of things, but each and every one of them is highly customized. We're talking totally one of a kind.
Now, what's really going on inside a job shop? Well, the work is what you'd call intermittent. You're constantly jumping from one small, unique job to the next. That means you need 2 really important things: super flexible equipment that can be changed around easily, and highly skilled workers who know how to adapt. And because every job is different, the workflow is kind of jumbled. It's not a straight line. All of this adds up to a high variable cost for each thing you make.
So, to make this real, a great example in manufacturing would be a custom spring maker. They're creating springs to very specific, unique measurements for each customer. And in the service world, a hospital surgery department is a perfect job shop. I mean, every patient is unique, right? Each operation is a distinct job with its own set of needs.
Okay, let's take one step along our spectrum to the batch process. This is kind of the middle ground. Here you're producing a moderate amount of stuff with a moderate amount of variety. The big idea, like the name says, is that you make things together in a group, or a batch. Just like a job shop, the work is still intermittent. You'll make a batch of one thing, then stop, retool, and make a batch of something else. But the difference is the equipment doesn't need to be quite as flexible, and your workers can have a more moderate skill level. The number one challenge here, the thing that keeps managers up at night, is scheduling. How do you possibly coordinate all these different batches to get everything done on time?
You see this process everywhere. Think about a bakery. They'll make a batch of chocolate chip cookies, then switch over and make a batch of oatmeal raisin. Or a local brewery making a batch of their new IPA. In services, an airline flies a batch of people from Chicago to New York, and a movie theater shows a film to a batch of customers for the 7 o'clock show.
Okay, let's do a complete 180 and jump all the way to the other end of the production universe. This is the world of high volume and low variety. Here, the name of the game is standardization, speed, and pure efficiency. We are now talking about repetitive and continuous processes.
The repetitive process is designed for one thing and one thing only: to churn out huge quantities of standardized goods. This is the very heart of mass production, where every single unit that comes off the line is basically identical to the one before it.
You probably know this process by its much more famous name, the assembly line. Because you're making the exact same thing over and over, you only need a little bit of flexibility in your equipment. This means you can have lower-skilled workers who are just trained on 1 or 2 specific repeatable tasks. And check out the cost structure. This is key. You have a huge upfront investment, a high fixed cost, for that specialized line. But once it's running, the variable cost to make each individual item is incredibly low.
The classic examples are things we all use every day, right? Cars, computers, and TVs rolling off assembly lines. But this process isn't just for making things. Think about an automatic car wash. Every car goes through the exact same steps in the same order. That's a repetitive service. Same with the cafeteria line. And now we've finally reached the most extreme end of the scale, the continuous process. This is what you use when you need a very high volume of a highly standardized product, and production literally runs around the clock without ever stopping.
In a continuous process, there's practically zero variety, so you don't need flexible equipment at all. What's really different here is that the product itself often flows, like a liquid, a gas, or even a powder. You can't just count individual units easily. And to make these massive facilities pay off, they're designed to run 24/7. They never shut down.
So what kind of stuff gets made this way? Think about basic commodities. Products like gasoline, steel, paper, and sugar all come from these massive continuous processes. And for services, your electricity and water from the utility company are delivered in a continuous flow. Hey, even the internet itself is a continuous service that's just always on.
All right, we've walked through all 4 processes one by one. Now, let's put them all on the screen together so we can really see how they stack up. This is where those big trade-offs we've been talking about become crystal clear.
This table really tells the whole story, doesn't it? Just look across the top row. Product variety. We go from completely customized in a job shop all the way over to highly standardized in a continuous process. Now look at the next row, quantity/volume. It's a perfect mirror image going from low to very high. And notice how equipment flexibility and worker skill level follow that exact same pattern. They start high on the left and end up low on the right. And finally, that critical trade-off with cost. High variable costs for job shops, but super low variable costs for repetitive and continuous processes. So with all these options, how on earth does a company choose? And why does it matter so much? Well, it matters because the secret to being efficient and competitive is making the perfect match. This whole idea is captured in a really useful tool called the Product Process Matrix. The logic here is actually pretty straightforward. It's like a 3-step dance. First, you have to really understand your product. What level of variety do your customers want, and what's your expected sales volume? Second, you look at the different process types and what they're good at, their strengths and weaknesses. And the final, most important step is to find that ideal match that lines up your product's needs with what a process can deliver. And this matrix shows that match perfectly. Look, if you have a low-quantity, high-variety product, a job shop is your ideal match. Trying to make that product on an assembly line would be a complete disaster. But if you're making a high-quantity, low-variety product, a repetitive or continuous process is perfect. Trying to make that in a job shop would be insanely expensive and slow. You want to be on that diagonal line. If you're on the diagonal, you're efficient. If you're off the diagonal, you're at a serious competitive disadvantage. So, at the end of the day, here's the crucial point. If you remember just one thing from this whole explainer, please make it this sentence. To be efficient and competitive, you must match your production process to your product's requirements. Any mismatch just creates waste, it drives up your costs, and it hurts your ability to compete. It's that simple. And that leaves us with one last, big strategic question to think about. A lot of new products start out their life in a job shop kind of setup, but as that product gets more popular and demand grows, the company faces this huge, expensive decision. When is the right time to make that risky switch to a more efficient batch or repetitive process? As you can see now, getting that timing right can be the difference between a smashing success and a total failure. Thanks for watching.